Hey guys, and welcome to Pheas Airsoft, where today we're going to install a Gate Titan in this TK45 gearbox. Okay guys, before I get started I just wanted to show you this on a 7.4 volt LiPo and an 11.1. So I've got 7.4 volt 2200 milliamp crane stock LiPo. This is the one I'm going to be running it on, and this is an 11.1 1450 milliamp battery that I'm going to just test it with. So I'll just open it up. So this is before the installation. Connect the wire in. So 7.4, not too bad, maybe a little bit sluggish. Full auto, not too bad, nice and steady away. So we'll now switch to the 11.1. Obviously significantly better on an 11.1. That's more or less what they are designed for and intended for. So obviously we can proceed with the installation now, and I'll show you again afterwards with 7.4 and an 11.1. Before we get started, I'd just like to ask if you are enjoying my content, please do consider subscribing because it helps me keep growing my channel. So let's get started then. So hopefully you've seen my previous video where I dismantled a TK45, the recoil variant, and today what we're going to look at doing is taking apart the rest of the gearbox, and we're going to install this Gate Titan. Now this is the basic version of the Gate Titan. Physically there's no difference between this and the advanced version, other than the software internally on this is effectively downgraded a lower version of it. You can pay for the upgraded software once you've installed it if you want it, but for this we've just gone for the basic version. So let's get started. We're going to open this gearbox up. So we're going to start by removing this carrier handle here, this charging handle here. Now to do this, what we're going to do is we're just going to pull forward on this bar here, and then it will, it's a little bit tricky, but you lift it up and it will pop out if we take that off. That whole assembly, just be careful with the dust cover, it is quite soft flimsy metal, so we'll get that out of the way. So obviously now we have more access to the gearbox where we can get stuck in there and get the rest of these things out. So let's have a look. In. These are T10 or Tox 10 size 10 screws, so I'm just going to remove them out from the top. Obviously the advantage being here that with this version of gearbox the spring is already out, the piston's inside there just loosely, so there's not much pressure to have to worry about or deal with. So we're just going to gently just remove all of these. There are little washers with most of these screws, so make sure that you keep them together just to keep everything ship shape. So screws are all out now, so we can split this. Just a quick point out, these are bearing based bushings in here, so obviously designed with the idea of high rate of fires in mind. So we're going to split this gearbox now, so I'm just going to put my thumb in at the back here and just push down while pulling up on the top part. And lift it open. Now it is pretty close, almost identical I suppose, to a version 2 gearbox inside. Obviously a few little differences here and there, but nothing too massive. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the piston assembly out with its tappet plate, and the spring system here is obviously very different, where it's coming from down there, so we'll get that out of the way. Next I'm going to remove the gear set and checking that they are not particularly dirty. They're well greased but not over greased, because if they're over greased it will affect the sensor on the Gate Titan. I'm carefully making sure that I don't remove any shims from any of the gears, so that they all go back in exactly as they were supposed to go back in. That one there I will just lift up and put back on the bottom of the gear, just to make sure I've kept it safe. And same for this one as well. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the trigger block. This whole wiring assembly is just going to go. We don't need this anymore. So, I'm just going to lift the trigger spring up. This component we won't need anymore. Neither will this cut-off be needed either. So, I'm just going to get my screwdriver in here. These out, so lift that up to drop out. What I am going to do is just to keep this safe for future, just in case, I'm going to just put these back together temporarily and put the screw back in. The Mosfet replaces the need for this, which acts as your safety to be pulling the trigger. That out of the way because that's no longer needed. Now we've got the cut off here that acts under the gear. This is no longer needed, and neither is this trigger block. So I'm going to first of all remove the trigger and its spring. This will be coming back in. We will obviously need the trigger. The Mosfet itself has sensors that pick up how far the trigger is pulled, so you can tweak it if and you so choose to do so. So I'm just going to remove one little screw in there. Out of the way, and one little screw in there, get that out of the way, and I want to just carefully lift that whole assembly out and remove that out of the way. Then we've got the cut-off lever here. We're just going to remove this as well, the whole assembly. Screw. There is a spring on the other side of that, so I'm just going to work this out from this side and just carefully pull it off there and lift it out. There's one part of the assembly, there's the bottom part, and as I said, we don't need these at all, so we can remove them and the screw. So there we are, we're back in the gearbox, in the bare gearbox now. So what we've got here is a sticker that I've applied that helps the Mosfet detect the movement of the fire selector, of the selector plate. As part of the installation, you have to put a sticker on this selector plate, which I'll demonstrate again in a second. The problem with it sitting on here is it gets scraped off and causes issues with the Mosfet, with the Titan. So what we've discovered is, if I flip this over, this is where the selector plate sits, moves backwards and forwards. I'll just put that in there a little bit. So as it moves backwards and forwards, the sticker is going to get scraped off. Now the reason where it gets scraped off is this corner here. A little bit better, this corner here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to file it down and just nicely round it off, and it stops the sticker getting scratched off. Then basically it means that it can move nice and freely without getting scratched off. So I've now filed this off on this corner here. Hopefully you should be able to see that pretty clearly. Just here, obviously you can see the silver metal, and I've just sort of filed the corner away. It'll mean now in a second when I put the sticker on that this won't get chipped off. So to show you this, as part of your installation kit from your Gate Titan, you get a series of stickers. Now it recommends that you use the middle strip, so you should just need one of these. So I'll just carefully get one off. Now I have cleaned this selector plate to get rid of any grease or debris, and it's important that you mount this into the bottom left hand corner like that, obviously as square as you can possibly get it. And then I found that if you just hold it on there just for a few seconds, it does stick far better down and is less likely to come off at all. So I'll just keep that firmly stuck down. Now fit this back into the gearbox onto the side, and then you can then see the sticker there. Now it will get a little bit dirty just because it's rubbing against black paintwork and things, but that's absolutely fine. It won't stop the sensors picking it up. But there we have, it's fully working and it's not getting scraped off by the side of the gearbox either, which is exactly what we want. So absolutely perfect. I can finish the rest of the installation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get the actual Mosfet in place, and we're going to start setting it all up and getting it configured. So here's the Mosfet out of the box. So it just separates into two parts. Just pull on it gently and move that out of the way. We're going to uncoil the wires. And then we're going to start looking at getting it all set up and in the right place. So as it is considered a drop-in Mosfet, we're just going to drop it in like that. And the idea is that we hold it roughly in place, more or less where it's going to be. We can secure it in a moment. And I'm just checking the sensor here, just down here, is uncovered and then covered up, so it knows when a full cycle has taken place. So I'm very happy with that. So now we're going to get this screwed down using some of the little bits from the installation kit. So I've got the gate here, and we're going to screw it down into the gearbox. Now we're going to mount it into this mounting point here, and as part of the installation set we get a variety of different washers. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use, as it says in the guide, the first one, which is this black insulation washer. Now what you do have to be careful of and wary of is that the screw doesn't go out through the other side of the gearbox, as it can impede obviously the selector plate. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert this to start with and screw it down, and then see how far it comes out on the other side. This is a little bit fiddly. So screwed that down. You don't want to go too tight because you could break the wafer, so but obviously tight enough. I'm just going to come to the other side. Now it is sticking out a little bit, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to unscrew it, and then I can then add one of these normal washers on top of the black insulating washer. Now just to note a point, this little square nut here comes out of the back of the gearbox. That is needed to screw the sling plate into. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run the cabling back through all of here, and obviously make sure that the necessary bits are where they need to be. So considering these are going back out from the Mosfet to the gearbox, we need to run these at the bottom, so I'm just going to very carefully just push them into these tracks. I'm going to use the flat end of a torque screwdriver just to help me manipulate those in a little bit. is a snug but good fit. And then I can now get the black motor wire. Now hopefully you'll remember from my disassembly video that the motor is not in the correct same facing as a normal AEG. And what I mean by that is that the red terminal is not at the front of the pistol grip, it's actually at the back of the pistol grip, whereas a normal AEG will be at the back. So I'll just manipulate them. There we go, got a nice snug fit there, and it is a snug fit. There is pretty much exactly the amount of room you need to get those in there. Now, if this was the advanced set and we had the advanced programming card or the USB link, what we could do now is we could insert the components, and we could obviously test to make sure that parts of the Mosfet are working. So we're kind of going to do something similar, but kind of on a bit of an ad hoc basis. So first thing we're going to do is obviously check that that goes back in there and that it's not rubbing on anything, which I am happy to say it is not rubbing on anything. Great, good start there. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the trigger in. We're going to seat the trigger, we're going to put the top circuit board on. Actually, what we're going to do first is we're going to put the top circuit board on, and we're going to see if the gearbox will actually close nice and snug without any issues. I'm just going to gently drop that on. Now the little nut at the back of the body there was causing the issue, so just going to check, and it does nice and neatly snap together, so I know that that's going to be a nice neat fit. So far KWA are holding up to their end of the bargain, their word, that this is literally just a straight drop in. I'm just going to pull this back out again. This time we're going to try it with the trigger in and increment it a little bit at a time. We don't want to overdo it too much and then end up with a broken system. So just neaten the spring up down the inside of there. Check I can pull it like that, which I can. Great. So I'm just going to sit this circuit board back on top. Now these little sensors here detect the trigger pull, and you can adjust the sensitivity so that it's the tiniest of trigger pulls through to the heaviest of trigger pulls. Obviously with no stopper in there, when you pull the trigger on safe, the trigger will pull because there's nothing to stop it going forward, but the gun will know not to fire because it's unsafe. And again, go nicely. There's no grinding in there, so I'm happy that that all fits. So I believe that is everything for our components, for our installation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to rebuild this whole thing and give it a test. So we're going to rebuild this now, and hopefully everything will work out perfect. Please make sure you do put the anti-reversal latch back in. It is needed, although we have removed the stopper from the trigger and we've removed the cutoff for the gear and the trigger switch. This is still needed, so please do make sure that this is put back in as part of your reassembly. just sliding the spring back onto that peg there, and I'm just going to angle this down and slide it onto that one as well. Gently just ease that back in there. So rotate the cylinder, there we go, push that round, perfect. Make sure the piston's sat in its track. Perfect. So now ready to put the top part of the chip back on. Just checking the seating positions, make sure nothing's going to grind against each other. Obviously, particularly on the Mosfet, you don't want anything touching the Mosfet. And I'm just going to gently position that. Manoeuvre the gears into place. There we go. Nearly there. There we go. So gearbox has gone back flush together. So now we can reassemble this a little bit at a time, and then get it tested and see how it performs. There we go. So we've got the gearbox reassembled. We've got the charging handle back on top. So now we can start the assembly process of the rest of the unit now. Okay guys, so I've come up against a little bit of an issue here where basically there is just no way to get this cabling through the gun without basically taking off this connector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snip this off, and obviously keeping the markings on, and then I'm going to solder it back on again at the end, and hopefully get some footage for you in time for this video to release on the day. So let's get on with it. Another option I could have gone for is spade connectors and just snip the wires part way down. The reason I've gone for this in particular is because it leaves the wires uninterrupted, no breakages whatsoever, and the Deans will be soldered back on again, clean and tidy at the end. So that's out of the way now. The rest of the reassembly should be pretty quick and easy. So to get this back on, I just manoeuvred this rod back into this notch here, and it will push forward to get the seated in at the back as well, and then this spring just pulls forward and hooks round. So that's that in place now, so we can drop it back into the receiver. For the purpose of this, I am going to reattach the stock tube. Ready. Now it will only screw in so far and it leaves it off at an angle, so what you want to do is just unroll it back from that, and then that will sit in nice and snug, and then that can tighten back down. But I'm going to leave that loose just for now, just to help me feed the wires back through in a second as we insert the receiver and the gearbox back into the receiver. So get that. This is going to be a little bit fiddly and take a little bit of working out to do. Or it can go absolutely perfect the first time I attempt it and come out really well. So I'm just going to feed those through there, and then nicely just sliding out the back there. I'm going to pull them back through a little bit. Motor wires, down here. Obviously, as I'm inserting this, I'm going to make sure that I put in the bolt release as well to keep that in there. It's getting a little bit tricky, and I could almost do with an extra pair of hands. Now, as I'm getting to lower this in, put the pins in the way, and I'm going to steadily ease those back. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to set the selector to the selector plate and the selector to single shot, and I'm going to ease those wires back through there, take it out and back in again. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to tighten that up, just finger tighten it back up, just to stop it particularly going anywhere, because it is moving about just a little bit, which is causing a few issues for the wires. There we go. So that goes in. So just keeping that squarely inside of there. Just going to pull them wires as the gearbox goes down and back, and hopefully that will just nicely drop in there. There we go, as everything nicely and neatly goes in. So the gearbox is nicely dropped back into place now. We've got the bolt release back in its place. So we're just going to drop the body pin in, and looking at that, that's looking pretty neat and tidy. So we can finish the rest of the installation back off now and get this pre-built pretty quick. What I am going to do in the short term is, just to keep this part safe, I am going to bring back in the upper receiver. I want to install the upper receiver now, just to give the dust cover itself a little bit of protection during the rest of the installation. So this is a little bit stiff to get back in, but well, click in. I'm just going to take this off camera to click it back together. There we go. So click back in place. I'm going to knock the body pin back through. So what's that's done is just giving me a little bit more stability now, so I can just finish it off without worrying about the dust cover getting damaged, which comes back nicely. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the body pin back through, remembering that the thread was on the right hand side. There we go. Next thing I can do is I can drop the mag catch in, spring from this side, the button in. Now obviously you're going to have to put quite a bit of pressure on this to get it down to connect up. Let's get the it's that one. Now what I can do is I can lay this down, correct size. There we go. Oops. So I've set the button down onto the connector. I'm just going to put the screw in and that'll start pulling it further down. Perfect. So now I've got ambidextrous mag selector sorted. Next I'm going to do is I'm going to do this stock tube. So run the wires down and out the end there. So I'm just going to bring this plate back in, and I'm going to hold those down. I'm going to drop that into position there. And then I'm just going to bring the screws back in. Last screw. So I've made sure they are quite tight in there, just to make sure that there's no chance of them coming loose anytime soon. But like I said in my review, it is worth making sure that you tighten these up probably the start of every game day or the end as well, just to make sure that they are nice and tight. I'm going to bring in my hammer's wrench and I'm just going to tighten this off just to keep it nice and tight, and make sure it's not going to develop stock wobble anytime soon. Give it a good nip. So that's nice and solid now, and it's square as well. So the next thing I can do is I can bring back in a spring assembly, slide that all the way back down in there, wiggle it around, there we go, and the recoil spring and spring guide, and then finger tighten those in so far. Get my screwdriver, tighten that back off, and then last stage is to do the motor. So feed the wires back through. Now don't forget, this is different to most other AEGs that I've come across, or at least version 2 using gearboxes I've come across, where on this one, where's the handle? There we go. So nicely in there. I'm going to put the other screw in. So we should have a screw at the top left here and the bottom right here, and tighten those down with a Phillips head screwdriver. We are ready to bring the motor back in. We've got our last few screws left. We've got the one from the back of the sling plate that we're going to put in now. And then we can install the motor. So, as part of installing the Mosfet, the motor comes pre-installed with this little add-on on the motor that prevents trigger arcing and burning out the trigger contacts. Now this is not needed anymore because of the way that the Mosfet works. So we are going to remove it. So to remove it, there are just two Phillips head screws on top of the motor. Remove one, that just lifts out of the way, put the screw back in, and then the exact same for the other one. This can go in the storage in a box somewhere with your bits, just in case you ever convert it back. Okay, so when you get the wiring back into the pistol grip, the red wire now, because of the way that the chip works, comes up the back of the pistol grip instead of the front like it would on a normal AEG or even this one earlier, and the black comes up the front. So what has to happen is the red comes forward from its hole and up the front here, as you can see it's coming up here and onto the contact, so the motor has to be turned around, and the black wire that's come up the front already comes around and goes onto its contact in the back there. So we've removed the anti-burnout system for the trigger block, so we've just got the motor on its own in there. We've connected it in, so the red wire came in at the back, came forward, up and onto its contact, so we've reversed the motor around from where it was originally, and the black wire comes up the front and goes around. Having just tested this, I am extremely impressed. We'll show you in a few minutes. Okay guys, so I just wanted to show you this firing on the two different batteries after the installation. So 7.4 volt LiPo, same one, exact same one as we used at the start. So this is with the Mosfet in, safe, a lot snappier, a lot quicker to turn over, full rate of fire. Much better, much nicer, a lot quicker, really happy with that. So we'll go for the 11.1 now. So I'll get that out of the way. So 11.1, same one, exact same battery as we used at the start. And here we go. So safe, single, full auto. Much faster, much snappier. Obviously built into this now I can do the burst modes and things like that as well. So just wanted to say a quick thank you to the Radcam, one of my subscribers, for letting me use your TK45 from JTAC Customs. Obviously you've had your Gate Titan installed, that's the one that's featured in the video, so this is about to be posted on its way to you very shortly, so thanks a lot for that, I do appreciate it. When I get my patches and my stickers, I will make sure that you do get a sticker and a patch as well for free of charge, if you can message me on Instagram or on YouTube. Thanks a lot for watching everybody, see you next time, bye.